Ever wonder what truly sparked human consciousness? I mean, really sparked it.
Yeah.
It might not be what you think. We're not talking about, the invention of language or the first tool. Well, not right away anyway.
Right. Not the usual suspects.
Exactly. Today, we're diving into something pretty different, a fascinating perspective called motion theory. It comes from Dave Champagne.
And what grabs you straight away about motion theory is just how big it is, its scope. It's not just tweaking existing science, it's proposing, well, a whole new way to look at the universe.
Totally. The theory suggests everything, how light works, time, even how we perceive things. It isn't fundamental about, particles and forces in the way we normally learn. Instead, it talks about something called structured motion, being the basic principle. And through that lens, we're going to explore a really provocative idea today: how human consciousness might have actually begun.
Yeah, our mission for this deep dive is basically to unpack the main ideas of motion theory. And we'll focus especially on this really intriguing idea about where our awareness came from.
Okay.
At its core, the whole theory kind of boils down to one big question: what's moving and what's the motion doing?
Right. Okay, let's really get into that central idea then: structured motion. So instead of a universe built from tiny bits, particles, that push and pull each other with forces, motion theory says, what's the picture?
It suggests that the fundamental building blocks aren't static things at all. They're dynamic, rhythmic patterns. Think of them as evolving loops of motion.
Loops of motion.
Yeah, like everything is in this constant state of, organized movement, light, gravity, even mass. They're all just different expressions of these underlying structured motions.
So not particles, but
Yeah.
maybe like energy patterns or fields that have their own rhythm.
Kind of, yeah. Patterns with inherent structure and rhythm. It's not just random jiggling. There's an organization to it.
And you mentioned this isn't about throwing out all of current science, right? It's more like looking at the same data but with a different interpretation through this lens of motion being primary.
Precisely. It's a reevaluation. It asks us to consider if motion itself, in these structured forms, could be the actual essence of everything we see.
Okay. Now, this brings us to something I found absolutely fascinating, especially thinking about how we started: the origin of consciousness.
Right.
And the theory has this incredible opening line: consciousness didn't begin with a word or a tool. It began with a sync lock.
What?
Okay. Wow. What is a sync lock here?
Right. So motion theory asks you to imagine early humans, pitch black world, no artificial light, just the huge night sky.
Okay.
And they see starlight, a tiny, consistent point of light. It's rhythmic, incredibly far away, and completely unlike anything in their immediate world: trees, rocks, animals.
Different.
Totally different. And the theory suggests the brain, think about like tuning forks.
Yeah.
If they're in tune, one vibrates, the other resonates.
Oh.
The idea is the brain does something similar. It locks onto or synchronizes with external rhythmic patterns it detects.
So it wasn't just like, a light. It wasn't passive seeing.
Definitely not, according to the theory. It suggests the brain, which was already good at picking up rhythms for survival, rustling sounds and animal walking.
Right. Predator or prey.
Exactly. It actively resolved the structure, the rhythm of that distant star. It wasn't just data coming in. It was the brain actively syncing up, locking on to this stable external rhythm.
And the key thing you're saying is that this star, well, you can't eat it, you can't fight it, you can't mate with it. It's totally outside the day-to-day survival stuff. So that moment, locking onto something completely abstract and distant, that's the proposed birth of thought, of consciousness itself.
That's the core argument, yeah. Being able to sync with something beyond immediate needs, something purely external, that suggests the beginning of abstract thought, thinking about something beyond yourself and what's right in front of you.
But what about, say, early communication or social bonds? Wouldn't those be more likely candidates for sparking abstract thought? How does motion theory square that?
That's a fair question. Motion theory would likely say that things like language and social interaction are absolutely crucial for how consciousness develops and how we express it.
Okay.
But it argues that this initial sync lock, this individual brain interacting with a non-survival external rhythm, provided the fundamental capacity for that abstract thought to even emerge in the first place. It's positioned as the trigger.
That's a really profound way to think about it. And this sync idea, it extends to how we see everything, right? Vision isn't just passive photons hitting our eyes.
Exactly. The eye isn't just a receiver. Motion theory sees it as an active system. It evolved to detect and, crucially, synchronize with the rhythmic patterns in light and movement.
So like waves on the ocean have a pattern, a drum has a beat,
Those are structured motions we see easily. The theory suggests something similar is happening at a much more fundamental level with light itself. Our eye is more like a rhythm detector or a sync detector.
Which really does paint a different picture. It makes our brain much more involved in actually constructing what we see. It's an active engagement.
It does. And it also starts to hint at why our vision might be different from, say, other animals, which leads to this idea of an evolutionary advantage.
Okay, yeah. So if early humans could sync with a distant star, how does that help you survive on the savannah? That feels like a leap.
Well, the theory proposes it might have been a pre-adaptation. Maybe the initial ability to sync with stable, distant rhythms wasn't immediately useful for stars, but it tuned the brain for something that was useful.
Like what?
Like detecting faint, distant flickers, a fire far away.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. Danger, or maybe another group, resources.
Exactly. So this enhanced sync sensitivity, this knack for resolving subtle rhythms at a distance, could give an edge, recognizing patterns others might miss.
But is there direct evidence? Or is this more of a theoretical link based on the core idea?
It's more the latter, a logical extension of the core theory. It provides a potential evolutionary pathway for why such a sensitivity might have developed and been selected for, even if its initial manifestation involves something seemingly non-adaptive like starlight.
Okay, gotcha. But then the theory suggests this trait, this sync sensitivity, it became kind of overpowered. We started resolving patterns we couldn't easily explain.
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting looping back to the stars. The idea is this sensitivity, honed perhaps for spotting distant fires, didn't just switch off. It started locking onto other distant rhythms like the stars and planets.
And we couldn't explain those.
Right, not in immediate practical terms. So what do humans do? We interpret. We create stories. Maybe that's the origin of mythology, trying to make sense of these cosmic rhythms we were synced with. Stars became gods. The sky becomes a map or a message.
It's fascinating how so many ancient cultures independently developed really complex astronomy, isn't it? Maybe motion theory gives us a new angle on that universal urge to look up.
It certainly offers a potential framework, yeah. It suggests it wasn't just idle curiosity, but maybe a deeper consequence of our brains actively engaging with those celestial patterns.
And again, it's not just seeing the light, it's syncing with the structure, the rhythm within that light.
That's the critical distinction in this theory.
Yeah.
The active engagement with the pattern, the synchronization, is key.
Which brings up the animal point. Why might monkeys, as the theory suggests, not see the stars the same way we do?
The idea there is that many animals' visual systems are probably hyper-focused on local motion, things nearby.
Makes sense. Prey, predators, obstacles.
Exactly. Stuff directly relevant to immediate survival. Their brains might not prioritize locking onto faint, super distant, steady rhythms like starlight. It just might not be relevant data for their processing.
Whereas we stare at sunsets. We look at the stars. There seems to be a real pull. It's funny, sometimes I just find myself gazing at the night sky, feeling this weird connection. Maybe that's the sync thing.
Who knows? But the theory suggests that difference, our fascination, might stem from this unique human ability or tendency to sync with those rhythms, even without understanding them, that resonant connection.
Okay, so that leads to maybe the most provocative bit for me. The idea that confusion, like the internal dissonance from syncing with stuff we don't get, that might be the actual origin of thought.
Think about it. Yeah, you sync with a star's rhythm. It's structured, it's there.
Yeah.
But it doesn't fit any immediate category of your world. What is it?
Right.
That mismatch, that internal need to figure it out, to resolve the pattern mentally,
Yeah.
that process could be the engine of abstract thought, the questioning, the search for explanations. Like our brains are hearing these rhythms from the universe's orchestra and trying to figure out the score.
So the what the heck is that feeling wasn't just curiosity, it was maybe the start of our whole cognitive ballgame.
That's the suggestion. And from that initial sync, that moment of wonder, the theory proposes this cycle. Sync, wonder, tool, discovery, sync again. Can you walk us through that loop?
Sure. It's basically a feedback loop. You sync with something unknown, like a star.
Okay, sync.
That sparks wonder, confusion, a drive to understand.
Wonder. Makes sense.
That wonder pushes us to create tools. Maybe simple tools at first, like controlling fire to mimic the light. Or perhaps conceptual tools, like stories and myths to explain the sky.
Cool. Got it. Fire. Stories.
Those tools lead to discoveries. We learn more about fire, we develop more complex narratives, eventually we build telescopes.
Discovery.
And those discoveries reveal new, more complex patterns and rhythms in the universe to sync with. And the cycle starts over, driving us forward.
So building fire, creating myths, telescopes, even things like AI now to process huge amounts of data.
Yeah.
It's all part of this cycle, driven by syncing with what the theory calls motion we can't ignore. That's the idea. It's not just the light, but the structure in the motion, the rhythm, that grabs our attention and compels us to understand.
So, bringing it all back, the true spark, according to motion theory, it wasn't language first or tools first in isolation. It was that initial sync with the cosmic rhythm. That moment our brain locked onto something distant, abstract, and just couldn't let it go. How does this stack up against more, say, mainstream neurological or evolutionary ideas about consciousness? Where's the main point of difference?
That initial moment is the crux, that fascination with something totally outside survival, that lock on to rhythm, that's framed as the point we became more than animal. I think the key difference is the emphasis on this interaction with an external environmental pattern of rhythm as the fundamental trigger. Many other theories focus more heavily on internal brain complexity or social dynamics as the primary starting point. Motion theory puts the environment, specifically structured motion, right at the beginning.
Okay, so the big takeaway, the core message for motion theory about us is that we evolved not just because we saw light, but because we resolved rhythm. And it kicked off with that first look up at the sky and that basic fundamental question.
Exactly. And it leaves you, the listener, with this really powerful final thought, straight from the source material. We didn't evolve because we saw light. We evolved because we resolved rhythm.
Wow.
And it started the first time we looked up and thought, what the fuck is that?
Yeah. That's definitely a profound and thought-provoking place to end. Hopefully this deep dive into motion theory has sparked some new ways for you to think about the world and maybe even your own consciousness.